Hi. So recently I posted the Twitch livestream footage of when I was working on my VRoidStudio models. And I posted some pictures on Reddit as well. And I had a few questions about how I made the hair for this model. Namely, I think they're very curious about this braid. So I thought I would show a way that I would explain making this hairstyle. I will not claim that I know best how to make hair. This is just something I have figured out from making 2 models so far. So we will jump in and create a totally new avatar. We'll select the girl. First things first, I use freehand groups to create non-symmetrical and freeform structures. So add freehand group. Now you'll notice this mesh around the head. This will display how close to the face and the head the hair lays. So if you want something that hugs this character, you just move the points closer to the skull. Quite simple. And also, another thing to note is, see how this shape is squashed and not symmetrical now? You can undo, but if you use the mirror button, these points will also move symmetrically and be more even in general. So to start off, we'll leave it as this is. It doesn't really matter much. We will use the brush tool. Basically, I'm using the default one. Now, I do own a tablet, and I usually use the tablet to make the strokes, but I am being considerate of people who don't have a drawing tablet, so we'll try and imitate the hair with a mouse. So you have to decide what hairstyle you want to create. It's good to have a reference, but since I'm trying to imitate and explain how I made this character, I will just follow this example picture and create it from scratch. So I'm using the default strand structure, just placing it down somewhere and pulling to the side. It follows the curve of the mesh quite easily, and if you go on control points, you can adjust this shape quite simply. You do need to pay attention that you don't put the points in a too extreme angle because it's gonna be very visible. So with this one strand, we're already off to a very good start. Now I pull another one from beneath this to the side and continue like this. Eventually I will just reach the back where I'm going to plan to put the ponytail. Now you see that there is some sort of clipping issue going on here, that there's like dark bits that show through. It's not completely avoidable, but you can try and use these points to control where this happens. Even on my final model, there's still quite a lot of it visible, but in the end it doesn't really distract so much from the model itself. I would try to tuck these ends in a little bit, make it look a little bit like it's braided, because that's what I do on my own like human hair. So this is a hairstyle I know very well. Okay, so we have our first little bit of the fringe done. Okay, let's see. Move this one so it doesn't show too much. Now, second half of this style is quite simple, just brush to the side of the head, to the ear. So I just pull a few strands like this here. Wait, this one got a bit. And also I'm aiming towards the center of the head right here. So this is basically how I made the fringe braided part. This is one group. Now you will realize quite fast that there is very good way to use these groups. Now I will continue by adding some of the thinner strands here for detail. You can pull as many small strands as you want, just how thin you want them, to add detail where you want, to mask things probably. So yeah, basically you can use the thinner strands to add detail, and you can always adjust the shapes as you go. Even if you have this done, as long as you have the strand selected, you should be able to change the width of it. See, like this. It looks much more natural now. So, second freehand group I will create. We will adjust the mesh. We will put it in mirror, and we will squash it really close to the face. So this second mesh is for the strands that come from in front of the ears. Again, we will take the brush, but this time we make sure the mirror is on, because we want them to be the same on both sides. And here you just again decide where and how you want them. You can always adjust where these things go and how they're shaped. You can use all sorts of like twisting effects and whatever, but I personally just create them like this. I have hidden these things a little bit. From the front view you can only see one strand. So I'll try and adjust this a little bit so it looks more like one bigger strand that's cut into two. So yeah, basically you can make them drape inwards, curled, smaller, bigger, Miko style things, up to you. You can also change the shape of the strands from this menu here, but for this model it doesn't really matter, it can be the default one. Now, to add the back hair, I like to do this first because this is going to be below everything else that's going to cover the top of the head. So we will add a procedural group. It's going to be placed really weirdly like this, but it's going to be fine. We just adjust the length we want by just pulling down. And we move the position of the hair to be behind the ear. Usually I do start with one that is exactly in the smack middle of the back, like this. And now you can use offset to make it lay closer to the skin. So for this one, I don't mind that it's so nicely snug against the skin, but I will move it a little bit around. I'm using the points, give it a little bit of air in the bottom, but I will utilize this other point and pull it nicely close to the head. So this is one layer. You can see that it's clipping inside the skull, and that's totally fine. We can even make it move further in so it doesn't clip through after, because we want to have the top of the head for the details that are being combed over, so to say. Like if you look at this, these strands, we don't want anything below to distract and clip into it, so just hide it inside the skull like this. So we add another procedural group to add some more layers and length. We pull it down to the same length. We attempt to do the same shape. Position it behind the ear. These points are a bit weird at the moment, so it's a bit of work to make them nice. You can also adjust the way that the tips converge. Now there is two things you can do. You can use flow convergence to make the hair tips gather up in one point more. You can also increase the interval if you want to space out the hair to separate strands more. It's up to you and your desired result. In my case, I just want the convergence, and now I will jump into the mesh again. Let me see the offset. We'll put it back to 0. Make sure our shapes are nice. I think I need to adjust the curves a little bit because they're not quite the same as the first layer of hair we did. Now I will change the position a little bit to cover the ears, and I will explain why. Now I will take this group and I will convert it to brush hair. Now I have all the access to the points like before, and if I want, I can adjust each and every one of them as I want. So for example, I'm going to move this one to cover a bit more on the side. Try not to make it too jagged. Again, this is just tutorial, so I don't really have to go too much into detail. Now I want to take this one, the one that's closest to the ear, and I want to scoot it a little bit back so it's hidden behind the ear. Like it actually has been moved there. Now the hair does end up clipping into the character quite often, so I'm not exactly sure how to avoid it. Don't know if you even can. That's why the first model I made was the short-haired one. Okay. After adjusting the hair strands to look as you want, you can go and see how they move. Pay attention to the fact that we have not added any bones to them, so it should technically still be one stiff board like this. And that's exactly not what you want. Although the fringe and stuff look okay because they're not moving, but the rest of the hair definitely needs more life. But first of all, we will take this group that's nicely tucked behind the ear. We will go clone and flip. Now we have an identical one on the other side. Next, we will create another freehand group, and we will work on the top of the head. We will leave the offset at default, which is 0.10. You can go a bit lower, like 0.8. Sorry, 0.8. 0.08, which makes it tuck just the tiniest bit underneath the braid. Of course, we can manually change the offset in any point that we want. Now we should take the brush tool, make sure mirror is off in this case. Adjust the width of the hair again and start pulling strands from this point to the back. following exact curve that you prefer. Now I'm going to make the strands different widths on purpose. And you can always adjust it after the point as I showed you. Different widths make it more natural looking. That's why I prefer changing it in the middle of the process, like this. Again, if something goes too wonky like this, it's super easy to just go in and adjust it. And if you think that there's too many strands, then you can also go back in and just decide. Like in this case, the angle of the model was too front facing, so I couldn't even see what I was doing. So I just adjust the shape with the points. Now it's already coming together quite nicely. There's quite a bit of coverage. If you want to maximize the coverage, what I would suggest is take the freehand group, go to your hair curve, and change the way the shape is. The higher the point, the wider the strand of hair. So I will go and just make the curve a little bit flatter. Now the points are a little bit tricky to grab, but nothing too difficult. Okay, let's continue with this side. And almost complete. Now, on the same layer, you can technically just adjust where the points end up. Move everything nicely so it's stuck together into a like scrunchie position. If you have a center parting, this part is made easier when you have the mirror enabled, because all the points you move on one side will be mirrored for the other side. So that's a really good thing, but considering this is a off-center look, then I can't do that. Pull a few more strands in place. And then we shall create the small ponytail in the back. Now for the ponytail, I will actually enable the mirror, because why not? You can create a new group, because again, need it to be overlaying in this area. So again, adjust the mesh, make sure you have the nice shape you want, and just go in. The shape got a bit weird, so at some point it's easier to just disable the mirroring, to be honest. Yeah, we can add a few thinner strands here and there if you want. It's mainly just trial and error, to be honest. Where's this mesh? Oh, it's going into the wrong group. Make sure I was going into the wrong place. So yeah, thinner strands add texture, add interest. In my case, I usually don't even show the back of my character's head, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's the way you do it. Technically, even if you want to, you can create a scrunchie with the hair tool as well, but that's not needed for me right now. So, next step. We don't want this all to be like a helmet. So we go to bone. I'll increase the number of bone groups. It doesn't really matter too much, but we just have more flexibility like this. Now there's a lot of bone groups, so we don't really want any of this area to move. Now you may notice that there is one area that has not been colored. So we will just select these and create a bone group. And that way it will be manually generated. Now there's a lot of bones on this section. We don't really want them. We want to make sure the fixed point is quite in the back so it doesn't move. And I'll show you the difference. This is the hair with the default bones. It falls apart. It moves all over the place. The only thing that doesn't move is this one piece that I tacked down by removing the bones. So we'll go back to the hair editor, go into the bones, and we will start selecting groups one by one, making sure that they do not have too many bones. They're fixed in place so that they don't get to move. There's a lot of trial and error in this, and that's fine. Just keep at it. Now the reason to have many hair groups is that every bone group moves as one unit. So if you have, for example, a very detailed hairstyle, but all the strands move together, it's boring. But if you have them segmented like this, they will move individually and look more natural. For the ear tufts, I just leave them as default. They usually work fine. Back hairs as well. It's just the top of the head that I want to make sure that doesn't move much. This one ideally would have a little bit more flexibility, so let's add a bit more boning to it. Almost done. So remember, the fixed point should be closest to the point where the hair is tied. Now if you go back to the camera, you'll see it moves a lot less. The side things move, the rest of the hair moves, ponytail moves. There's a little bit of movement in the hair still. You can increase the stiffness as well. But if you're not planning on doing too much movement, then it's totally fine. And that's it. This is technically how I created my own avatar and the hairstyle. Now again, I must remind you that I am just a beginner at this. What I've shown you is all what I've learned from my own experimentation. And I think the most important part about this is that you have fun. So thank you for watching. I hope this walkthrough was helpful. And if there's any more questions like about custom clothing and how I made them, please comment below and I will gladly make more videos on this topic. See you next time!